Yo brothers, you're at home with a geek? I'm Mark, aka the Little Black Dude. Welcome to Monday Mailbag, where I read Facebook and Twitter comments that you sent to me at my Facebook page, facebook.com/homewiththegeek, and at my Twitter, at homewiththegeek. So, let's jump right into it. I've asked a couple of questions over the last few weeks on my Facebook page, and one of them was, can you name a character from an afternoon show you enjoyed watching? Well, I got a couple of pretty interesting responses. Facebook follower and a good friend of mine, Brian, writes Goliath from Gargoyles. Gargoyles was such a great show. It was a Disney afternoon exclusive, but it was so different from the other shows that were on there. Where shows like DuckTales, Darkwing Duck, Goof Troop tended to be more comedy-based, Gargoyles had so much more action and it was a much darker series. Goliath was the leader of the small group of gargoyles who protected the castle in Ireland that unfortunately had a spell cast on it after a humiliating defeat that would cause the gargoyles to stay stone until the castle rose above the clouds. 1,000 years later, they get transported to New York and continue fighting crime. It was an interesting show. It was a very cool animation style. And the fact that most of the voices were done by people from Star Trek The Next Generation, that's like Inception geeky. For example, Goliath was voiced by Michael Dorn, otherwise known as Worf. Sweet, merciful crap, this guy's voice was amazing. Next one on the list here, my sister Michelle, a dear lady, wrote Pepper Ann. Pepper Ann, when it first premiered in the late 90s, was often referred to as a girl version of Doug, which I still find an interesting, if not inappropriate, comparison. The only thing that they had in common was the fact that both of them were in 7th grade at the time of the show running. The two shows were completely different. You could find more comparison between Doug and As Told by Ginger than you could between Doug and Pepper Ann. But it still was an interesting show. For example, the fact that characters like Milo Kamalani, who was on the show as well, was voiced by Danny Cooksey, who did a lot of voiceover work, most notably from Shaolin Showdown. He was Jack Spicer. But what I find most amusing is the fact that the principal was played by Don Adams, who most people would know as Inspector Gadget. But that's neither here nor there. Pepper Ann was an interesting show because it was one of the first slice-of-life type shows that had a female protagonist that was aimed at kids of both genders. So it definitely made a difference. Then Jason, my brother and another good friend, decided to throw in Bonkers. Well, once upon a time in Toontown, Bonkers D. Bobcat, who first showed up in shorts from the show Raw Toonage, if I'm not mistaken, ended up getting his own show where his TV career got canceled, unfortunately, because Toontown was pretty much getting shut down, and all the tunes were being shipped out to the real world. He ended up becoming a police officer because they had recruited a number of tunes into the police. His original partner, a guy who went by the name of Lucky, his last name was Piquel, and everyone who knew him knew that, but most people would call him Pickle, which used to drive him nuts. But Bonkers was not a bad show, but not a great show either. It had its moments where it was really interesting, but there were more often than not just contrived storylines that happened over and over again. Kind of trying to harken back to the 60s and 70s era of cartoons, but in the early 90s. Well, mid-90s. It didn't really work as well as it could have, but it definitely was a fun show to watch. And last but not least on this subject, Bill Gertz, my buddy, my brother, who I used to work at Toys R Us with, decided to drop some knowledge on me with Major Blood. Now, most people will remember the main characters from shows, but oftentimes there will be secondary characters who are just as interesting. Major Blood was one of the generals from the organization Cobra from G.I. Joe, and he did show up in every iteration of G.I. Joe. All of them had some featuring of Major Blood. Whether you're talking about the Sunbow version of the show, the Geek version of the show, if you're talking about G.I. Joe Resolute, if you're talking about G.I. Joe Extreme, if you're talking about the comics, the Marvel comics as well as IDW, you will find Major Blood. The man was an international criminal. He was wanted on 3 continents and had a tactical mind that was amazing. He was proficient in all types of weapons, small arms, large arms, and just was a nutty guy. But even with all his skills, he still was kind of a minor player. He was an interesting character, though. But, hey, that's how it goes sometimes. Thanks for joining me for Mailbag Monday. Please come back every Monday for more of your tweets and Facebook posts read by me, the little black dude. If there's something you want me to read, please use the hashtag Geek Mailbag on either Facebook or Twitter, and I will read it on the next show. If you're new here, please subscribe. Always a good thing to have new people. And if you like this video, there's going to be more right over here. Until next time, this is the little black dude. Stay geek and proud.